It's
Okay.
my honor and pleasure to introduce Cynthia Collins. We call her Cindy, who is not only a health psychologist, but also, in my opinion, the most awesome nutritionist who sometimes agrees with me and sometimes does not. But Cynthia, thank you so much for coming today to talk about a very, very important topic. And I want you to first introduce yourself and kickstart this forum. We have a lot of patients online. We also have some doctors online. And everyone's eager to ask you very, very important questions. But I'll let you get started and then we'll talk.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Hello, and thank you so much for having me back again. I'm so excited to be here and very honored to be a part of this for everyone. And the only time, by the way, you'll see a health psychologist and dietitian disagree with the doctor is where we are coming from different worlds and then want to learn something. So, because everything is changing and upgrading, and we're all coming out of our own fields, and that's how we best help you is when we're open about these things. So, I think that's fantastic. Always deferring to the doctor, though, no worries. So I think that's important. I actually asked you about one today that I just told them now by WhatsApp. No, no, don't take that. Let's wait on that. Let's wait to talk to Dr. Shahina. So, and doctors are different sometimes too, which is fine. That's because the field is open to different ways of looking at it. For nutrition, what I love about nutrition is twofold. One, it gives you something you can do for yourself, some control back in your life and something that actually makes a difference. And also, it's right there at our fingertips. So that's what's really beautiful. Everyone has to eat. We're already eating. And I'm going to just share just three little slides with you, I think three, just to kind of kickstart your mind in case you came today, but you really didn't know exactly what you want to ask. But I know many people already have questions too. So I'm not going to take long with this. Just going to share a couple of screens here. Okay, here we go. So what I want to start with is the beginning here, just to show you that this is all about personalizing and optimizing your diet. That's really what we're trying to do because there's not just one diet for everybody. There are certain principles that apply across the board to cancer, but for each person here, you have unique needs. And why is that? Well, first of all, we make a big deal over nutrition because you need to sustain your body while you're on treatment. That's really, really important. And after that, if we don't target certain things about your nutrition, we may not be overcoming the symptoms and the side effects you're having. So I might switch everything I'm doing with someone as soon as they start to have a lot of nausea or some other side effect. And then there's certain do's and don'ts or certain things you can add to the diet to help. There's so much to do. And then the third thing is if it's not individualized, how will all your unique needs be met? Some people already have other concurrent GI issues and things like that. So we need to meet the needs that you have that might even be a cultural need. Maybe you really want to stick with the way your family is used to eating, the foods you're used to having. So we have to really individualize things. Does this all take a little more time and patience and work? Yes, but that's why we do what we like to do. Okay, and then next, I just want you to be aware of a beautiful array of food that's out there. Nature has already provided these beautiful antioxidants and lots of other flavonoids and anti-cancer chemicals already in your food. And just to emphasize that even the spicing can make a big difference on getting what you need in your diet. And sometimes less spice and more spice. A great case in point is the use of ginger for nausea. And there are many ways to do it, but it absolutely is a fantastic anti-nausea. Even if you have medication, it's a great breakthrough. Okay, and then lastly, vitamin C. We don't really need to take these high dose supplements and infusions. We're capable of getting this from our diet. It is super important for your immune system. Absolutely true. And then don't forget your water. I'm always trying to stress that water shouldn't be an afterthought. Your hydration, your fluids are necessary for the medication and the other treatments to do their job in your body. it's using the internal water, so you need to replete it. You need to keep your hydration up. It might even be the reason behind a headache or fatigue sometimes, that you're not hydrated. And lastly, we're going to touch on what's the scoop on sugar. What is it with sugar? Why all of a sudden all those beautiful baked goods or that beautiful fruit, is that off limits? We're going to get to exactly what the yes and no about that is. Okay. All right, so that's my little stimulation for today to get us on the right track.
So
So,
I'd like everyone to put their questions in the chat, and if you want to even talk, please just lift, put your hand up, and we'll unmute you or unmute yourself. But I want to start with the first thing. A lot of the people here online have been to my office, and in my office, I have these big jars of candy that I love to distribute. Whenever I have a patient that comes to me, the first thing that they say is, "Why is there candy in your office? And we're not allowed to eat sugar. Why are you advocating for it?" And I'm like, "I'm not advocating for sugar, but I don't think you need to pull out everything." And I remember when I was in the US, there was a big study that came out of Harvard. It was, I think, the nurses health study group
mhm.
survey that came out that actually showed that cancer survivors who do fad diets actually didn't do as well as those who had balanced nutrition and with all the components in. So what are your thoughts on completely eradicating sugar versus perhaps taking things in moderation?
What a great way you presented that too. Is because in that study, like you said, you ended up losing, not getting some of the nutrients you needed. That's the biggest worry. So there's a fear then behind sugar. I'm constantly saying it's not poison. Sugar is just one element in our food. We're going to talk about what it is, but if you start to say no, absolutely not to certain things in that way, you're limiting your diet often from the other things that you need. So the truth of the matter is all of your food, by the way, will turn into blood sugar or blood glucose, which is what fuels your cells. You have to have that to fuel your cells. But simple sugars, of course, like candies and cookies and things like that, they do fat more quickly or rapidly get into your bloodstream and elevate your blood sugar if you're eating a certain amount. A small candy, especially a small amount of sugar in something that has water and fiber with it, like a piece of fruit, is not going to raise your blood sugar very much, and it's not going to do it rapidly. It's all in the amount. Would you go home and try to put on weight with lots and lots of ice cream? No, that's not healthy. But is it okay to have some? Absolutely. And I mean this in a biochemical way. I don't just mean it in a you should be free and it's a nice thing to do. I really mean biochemically. You're not harming yourself until you raise your blood sugar. And the real problem isn't even the sugar, it's the insulin afterwards. So you'd have to raise your blood sugar so high that your insulin kicks in, and now you have an inflammatory response. For those of you who have really read about this, that's what your concern is. But it's not the kind of thing in the life where you can turn it on or off. These are things in nature where we have balance. So the balance of some glucose, which gives you energy, fuels every single cell around your body, is necessary as long as we don't overdo. So that piece of candy you might take, from the jar, either Dr. Shahina's or the one cookie or the small amount of juice or a nice luscious fruit, none of that is going to raise your blood sugar to a point where you're doing harm to your body, but it is going to give you some fuel, and it's going to give you maybe even a little appetite stimulant too if you need it. So that's the truth on sugar. If anyone wants to go a little deeper, a little more detailed, let me know. I'm here to answer your questions.
Absolutely. So I wanted to divide the rest of this conversation into two parts. Those people, the nutrition that you need while you're taking chemotherapy, and then what happens after chemotherapy. So maybe we can start with the after chemotherapy bit. A lot of patients, and we have a lot of breast cancer survivors over here, even non-breast cancer survivors, those who've got other malignancies online. After the chemotherapy, a lot of women complain of significant weight gain. They're saying that even if they stop eating, they're still gaining a lot of weight. Some people have even tried doing Mounjaro or Ozempic to try and reduce their weight, but then they rapidly gain it afterwards. And it can be psychologically traumatizing. That's number one.
Mhm.
And then number two, I feel like the nutrition is a very important part of for them to overcome the fatigue of having gone through the chemotherapy. And that can help, but we just don't know how to do it. Maybe
Mhm.
you could shed some light on that.
Absolutely. Okay. So post-treatment, and those do seem like the two main factors, right? That women and men, but especially women with hormonal changes are dealing with afterwards, even the non-hormonal cancers, because of a variety of things that have happened. Your metabolism has been affected by your treatment. Well, what's that mean? Metabolism is the rate at which you burn your normal calories, the rate at which your heart beats and your liver works and your muscles work and everything. And typically, when we're the same weight, we're eating just enough. We're eating the calories we need to have that metabolism. When that starts to change, even the same calories can suddenly make our body store and not use what we're eating. Well, how do we store that? First as carbs and then as fat. So that's where the weight comes from. So we have to do two things. One, we have to start to look at what we're eating. Sometimes people try to eat less, but that doesn't do the trick because you still have to do this in a stepwise fashion to work with this change in your metabolism. So here's how I first look at something like that. Overall calories, am I eating too much? Okay, could be volume. You could have different desires on eating and things like that that have changed from going through chemo, especially your taste and a lot of things have changed. Or maybe emotional eating. So we want to look at the too much. Then we want to look at the heavy calorie foods, breaded, fried, or high fat. Pull those out. After that, we're going to look at carb, protein, and healthy fats and make sure you have the right ratio of those. And then it might even be how much you're eating in one sitting of the appropriate things. Sometimes you might even have to eat a little earlier in the day or have a little open window where you're not eating. For some people, eating small amounts, grazing through the day, how are you going to know which of these works for you? Well, that's where either yourself keeping good records or working with a dietitian helps because you want to start a pattern of eating that you then maintain to see if it works. If not, switch it over to another pattern of eating that might work. It's very frustrating, I know. It's very difficult because the rules seem to have changed. Like you used to eat this way, everything was fine. Now you're having to change how you're eating. You may be even used to exercise. Now you're too tired. You're not sure what kind of exercise. It really takes sitting down and looking at the overall pattern after you take out over volume, after you take out over calories, and then you look at what you're doing even in a sitting. Fatigue is the second really difficult thing. That's the number one complaint after radiation treatment, especially, is fatigue. And this is going to sound very counterintuitive, but all the research shows that is if your food is right, like you have enough fluids and you have enough protein, after that, if you're not going up and down on your sugar levels, which some people do by not eating enough carb, be very careful. The next thing is exercise. So it's the only thing in the research that works. If your water is fine, your protein is fine, and you're not having these sugar drops, you need exercise because exercise meaning movement. Okay, movement. That's why I'm always recommending even yoga, walking, qigong, tai chi, any kind of movement will start to get your circulation going better, which always with better circulation, you burn more calories. You're resetting basically your metabolic rate. You're resetting yourself. When you take some of those medications, as Dr. Shahina mentioned, that's it gets in there and it affects how your body utilizes the food basically. But when you go off, you've had a reset metabolism and all of a sudden you start gaining weight again. You've got still going to have to do the hard work. I just signed up a new client yesterday, breast cancer, because she got off the drugs and now is gaining weight. So now we have to do what we always should do anyway. Look at the diet pattern and then change the pattern of what's being eaten, what and when and how it's being eaten. I promise you it works. Does it take longer than it maybe used to take? Yes. As we age, these things take longer. And after we've reset our metabolism, it can take longer too. But if you have patience, it works. So.
So we have some questions in the chat box about the post-recovery period. Nita Batra actually asked the question, how about taking a fresh shot of freshly grown wheatgrass juice early morning? Is it helpful post-recovery? I sometimes have a problem with that in patients who've got hormone receptor positive breast cancer, because there's been some anecdotal data suggesting it has hormones, but again, would defer to you. I don't know much about wheatgrass.
So, thank you for the question. And wheatgrass, it's another one where you mentioned the word fad, Dr. Shahina, that it has its aspects of why it's good, the chemical nature of it. And so that's great, but it's not the cure-all, and it's not something that every day if you do it, it will resolve all the issues and problems you have. It really isn't. I know that we have a couple of clinics here where that's the number one, wheatgrass every day, and everyone thinks it's the wheatgrass. It's not, but it's a healthy component, except for the concern that it can be a plant estrogen. So phytoestrogens, or some of our plants that appear to be like a phytoestrogen, have created a great controversy because we're not sure if they go in and block the estrogen receptors, which would be fine, or if they go in and stimulate those estrogen receptors. And if you are an ER positive breast cancer patient, you don't want anything in your system that might stimulate estrogen receptors. So there are plenty of other products in nature that are not wheatgrass that wouldn't stimulate your estrogen receptors. So I would opt to go to something else if you're ER positive. If you're not, then I think it's fine. But I wouldn't say you need to adhere to every morning. Just have one more thing that you include in your diet. That's the same thing, because I'm sure it's going to come up for something like matcha. Okay. Also, there are certain other products like that that are greens products that are excellent for getting some of the phytochemicals into your diet, but be very careful not to use them at a level where it would be so preponderant it could stimulate your estrogen receptors.
So
So.
another question that's come in is, what are your thoughts on fasting autophagy?
So I think that used correctly and used wisely, which of course now I'm really, that's a caveat to what I'm going to say. It has very good use. In the animal world, and I used to do a lot of animal research. In the animal world, we're seeing amazing things with near starvation, but that's just to see that one direct effect. We're not trying to have a healthy, happy animal. We're trying to just get one direct effect. So be very careful with that animal research and whether you think it applies to you or not. In human research, we're seeing that when it's utilized in a cautious fashion, opening a window of fasting, for example, like a 9-hour fasting, a 9-hour period, where that's where the word breakfast in the English language, break fast, right, comes from, or opening a 13-hour window. There are a lot of different researchers toying around with different combinations of windows and what to break the fast with. Why would it be positive to do? It can help reset the metabolism for weight loss, but it can also lower the peaks and valleys of glucose, or flatten out the peaks and valleys of glucose, I should say, because of the autophagy. It does do that. So it seems to not provide a cancer environment, let's put it that way, because we're trying to make our bodies the least hospitable to cancer. That's really what this is about. Acting or thinking that it could cure a cancer is a very dangerous road to go down. There is very good data on keto and fasting with brain cancer, but I don't feel like the rest of the data is mature enough for anybody to apply it, especially to breast cancer. But if you want to bring it to a different level where you just open some windows of fasting, intermittent fasting that's caused, and make sure you watch yourself carefully, because you are going to have highs and lows in your blood sugar, which could drive you to eat more. You have to be very careful with these things.
So I have a lot of patients post chemotherapy that actually want to do intermittent fasting, and I've always advocated for it. We have scientific data. As you know, there was a big New England Journal paper that actually came out on
Mhm.
intermittent fasting. I certainly don't advocate it during chemo, but
Mhm.
after chemotherapy. But
Mhm.
at what stage should they be doing it? Because post chemo, you have different parts of their chemotherapy journey, right? So the immediate post chemotherapy where they're really tired, should they really be doing intermittent fasting at that point or much later?
My opinion is it's not wise at that point because it's actually detrimental. You're in a stage of what I call repletion at the end of chemo. You're actually needing to put back in a lot of the nutrients that were used by the process of the chemo doing its thing. When chemo is doing what it does and all the other chemical reactions occur, they require your B vitamins, it requires your vitamins and minerals that are in your body. So you've used more than you normally would have in just your everyday life. So first you need to go through repletion. On top of that, you might not have been eating as well as you could have because there are days where you just couldn't eat or didn't feel like eating. So I feel a good 2 months minimum past chemo before you would start with doing some intermittent fasting. The other thing about the intermittent fasting is that what you do eat when you're not fasting matters. Like, because now it really matters that you're tight in getting all the nutrients you need. That's macros, meaning the protein, carbon, fat, as well as your micros, all your vitamins and minerals. So it's even more important to make sure you have the right things.
So Sharon has put in a question about estrogen. Any comment on soya, flaxseed, and garlic? And this is specifically, I think, for patients with breast cancer that have hormone receptor positive disease. Um, uh, I mean, we generally don't encourage supplements of soya, but I always say flavoring is okay. Even flax seeds, some people try to take it as a supplement. I say, it's okay for it to be as a flavoring. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I do like how you're resorting to the flavoring idea because, see, in our minds, what we think that does is minimize it, so it's not such a big deal in the diet, and you're minimizing the risk. So the truth of the matter is, with soy, we still see research where it might be helping estrogen receptor positive, and some where it clearly isn't. And so I'm doing this for so long that we've wobbled and then come to one decision and then wobbled again in the research where it looked like it was both ways and then came to a decision. So given that, I say back off. When something is wobbling like that, keep it at a very minimal, low level. Even the World Health Organization and the American Institute of Cancer Research on their websites are saying for certain women, whether they were pre or postmenopausal, the soy is fine. But I still say because we know science changes, right? And we could have a new study come out next year or next month on something that wobbles like that in the research. I feel it's the safest route to do the minimal, if any, even for soy, flax, and for garlic, for anything that we know is estrogenic. Even chia has some estrogenic properties as well. But if you had one dish or you went somewhere and it was in there, or you had a little tofu or someone made you a soy, once in a while is so diluted, it's not to walk in fear. It's not to have you walking in fear over it. It's just important for you to not putting a lot in your diet, thinking that's your new vegetarian protein source. And for non-estrogen related cancers, the flax meal is an excellent source of your omega-3 fats. So that's why it's really important if you're looking out there on the web for some guidance, make sure they're talking about your specific cancer, or talk to a professional who is going to look at your specific cancer, because what's right for one patient or one type of cancer would not necessarily be right for another.
So Liz Reagan actually writes, can you replace soya with coconut aminos? I actually don't know what that means, but please tell
Yeah,
me.
okay. So that's a very good question. And I heard this question again the other day, and aminos must be becoming more and more popular. I love this question. So soy is a protein. So it actually got more and more popular out of the cultural use of it for Asians, et cetera. It got more and more popular in Western world because it was a substitute for animal protein. Because if someone who's trying to be vegetarian, instead of just going to nuts and beans, they said, I need something else. So they went to soy products. So now we have soy, so many soy products, soy burgers, everything soy drinks, soy milks, right? And even hidden soy, unfortunately, because it's inexpensive. All right. So if you wanted to substitute for that, you're looking for a protein. And protein is made of amino acids. So the singular units of protein are aminos or amino acids. So instead of going and finding a different plant protein, like maybe having a rice protein powder or a derivative of animal like a whey protein powder. Some people are saying, let me just go all the way down to the amino acid and just do those. You can, but if you're going to consider that protein source, you've got to add up how much protein you're actually getting. It will tell you, it should tell you on the label how much actual protein that's considered. Typically, it's not a lot, and you need to know how many grams of protein per day you need. So, as your sole source, probably not. As one source, yes, I think it's fine.
So before we go on to looking at how to support patients during chemotherapy, there's a question that Catherine Chilton has actually put on the chat box. Um, Thank you for a great response to the question for soya for ER positive cancer. Answer is exactly the same as the sentiment I follow. Studies keep changing, so I avoid. That's good.
Yeah.
Another question is 1 year post chemo on Arimidex and Zoladex. Are there specific foods? I think this is a great question. Are there specific foods we should avoid to increase or support us with our sleep flushes? I'm assuming she means hot flushes and mood swings.
Yeah. So for the longest time, I unfortunately had to say no. But I wasn't satisfied with that answer either, especially once I also went through hot flashes. I really began searching, like there must be something. And it turns out there's an interesting thing about the body. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but if you are drinking a hot drink, you think you might be warming up, but it actually cools your body off, you know? So, like when you can be at the beach or out in the sun and sweat more, it's cooling your body down, okay? And doesn't a hot flash feel like an internal combustion? It does, and that's kind of what it is, all right? So there are what we call cooling foods. There are foods that we know open up the microcirculation so that you can get more of the heat out to your extremities and then cool your body off. So anyone who's interested, you can give your email to Dr. Shahina. I'll send you a list of these so-called cooling foods that are supposed to at least help you feel a little cooler. You may not immediately internally feel the difference, although I do get feedback from patients that it is helping with their hot flashes to do that. In addition to that, foods that are high in B vitamins, or let's say you wanted to have a protein drink and you knew it was high in B vitamins, they open up the microcirculation. So I wouldn't suggest going and buying a supplement of niacin. That's not where I want you to go, but it's okay if you had B vitamins in your protein powder mixed in together. You're going to open up microcirculation, and that is cooling. Thank goodness.
Perfect.
Mhm.
I know that Ayub has put a question there, and I can see his camera on. So I'm going to ask his question.
I see
Is
him.
it okay to drink alcohol? Of course, post chemotherapy, because I would never allow it during chemotherapy.
You asking for my permission or are you asking if it's healthy?
I think he's asking for both.
Yeah. So that question, it's so amazing. Even last night, okay, so my nieces come, we have Thanksgiving tomorrow, holiday here. So my nieces come home from college and the question was, is it better to have real grain alcohol because it doesn't have the carbs or a wine, right? And which one affects cancer? So we know that alcohol is a carcinogen in the lab, in a petri dish, and an animal model, it is. To what degree that could be a cancer causer in our body? We see this with heavy alcohol, and especially when it's mixed with smoking, for example, and head and neck cancer, right? So those extreme examples we understand. Now, the idea of drinking in moderation, which has to be then measured, you have to know what do you mean by moderation. Most of the research I read, people have settled in on moderation is okay. That's typically 2 drinks for a man, which would be two jigger ounces basically, and one for a woman. With the idea that you are well aware, caveat emptor, you understand it, you are imbibing in a carcinogen. But you are also when you eat a smoked food, you are also when you eat some processed foods, you are also, but we were trying to dilute these in our diet, right? We're trying to dilute them because alcohol and social drinking and religious drinking too has been around for eons. So if that's part of your lifestyle and that's something that's important to you, as long as it's not a chronic intake or an elevated intake, that would be the permission side, that you're making a personal decision to do that. I have recently gone to some conferences that are international where researchers get up and say, we've got to tell people no alcohol because they don't understand. And again, everyone starts to weigh in on it's the amount. It's as long as you're aware that it is a carcinogen, it's the amount that matters. So that's the answer. Did you want to like come back on that answer with anything?
Ayub, do you have any comment? I think he was just partying over the weekend, quite honestly, and he doesn't want to. We have a lot of patients, at least in my part of the world. I don't know if it happens in your part of the world, that suddenly after they're diagnosed with cancer, start buying sour soap. Um, I have no idea whether it helps or not. Please
Yeah.
educate us. Is it
Yes,
worth
I had to get
the
educated
money?
too. So I was living in a northern region and I was moved to the south. And I had someone say, my father has lung cancer and we're using soursop. Is that okay? And I said, what? Like I had no idea, no earthly clue what it was. It is a tropical tree, plant and tree, and it's very preponderant in the Caribbean. So of course, where I live in Florida, people are now growing it. It's very easy to get. It's a very high antioxidant fruit, the fruit and the leaves. People drink concoctions from the fruit and they also drink from the leaf, like a tea can be made or a tincture can be made from the tea. I found one study so far, one actual study with cancer I'm talking about, which shows that it does have the ability to slow progression of cancer growth in a petri dish. Okay, we don't yet have a lot of clinical studies where we have any control over it and we're seeing it affect cancer at that time. So would I say start it? Mostly I would say to people, yes, because it gives you a sense of control. It's something you can do. I don't see any harm in the soursop. I don't see any difficulty with it. I just want to make sure you understand it's not the cure-all. Having lots of it in your diet is not necessarily going to be any better than having some. And I don't want you to overweigh its importance, but I do think that it's healthy. Yeah.
That takes us nicely into the chemotherapy support part because how can this help patients while they're taking chemotherapy?
So the question has been for a long time, if a patient is going through chemo and can get a lot of anti-inflammatory and antioxidant chemicals, which are in your food, I showed you just a few of those while they're on treatment. Is that helping? Twofold. One, lowering some of the inflammation that naturally is being caused by going through chemo is not a bad thing. So I love to have patients on the front end before treatment and really beef up the diet, not really beef, but get the diet optimized with all these anti-inflammatory and antioxidants foods. First of all, to see which ones you really like and to get in the habit. And secondly, because I'm trying to reduce inflammation before we start and then keep the inflammation that's being caused as low as possible as you're going through. Also, it can help with bowel movements having those foods. It can help with your sense of energy having those foods. It can help with your sense of overall well-being having those foods. And they also are kind of the vehicles for certain things you might need, like a really nice smoothie of antioxidant, anti-inflammatory veggies, and you're constipated. We can put a little oil in there, and that's the stool softener you need. Beautiful, right? So there are a lot of reasons why it is good to have these during chemo. We're now starting on the second part to get some research showing that certain specific antioxidants and anti-inflammatory components of the food might even enhance the chemo effect. And that's where the research is really important because if that's true, and I have had a lot of doctors tell me that they definitely feel that that's true for certain vitamins or minerals, then that's a great way. But we need more data before we can across the board say that it's helping the chemo.
So if you had a new patient tomorrow who was about to embark on chemotherapy, what advice would you give them to be able to go through that journey with while doing chemotherapy in terms of their nutrition to support them?
Yeah, the first thing is knowledge. Knowledge is so powerful. So let's really talk about how were you eating? Get rid of the idea that anything about how you were eating did or didn't cause this, because it's simply
Yeah.
not true. It's not that black and white. So let's put that aside. Then also, what fears do you have about food? So let's really look at what is food? Like when you say, so, oh, they're telling me I have to have soursop, but well, what is soursop? Oh, it's a fruit. Let's dispel the fear about. So I think that part is so important. And then now that you know that, let's put into your diet the things that you like and that you would be willing to introduce and make your diet as optimized as possible for while you're going through chemo. Optimization is not only the antioxidants and anti-inflammatories, it's also variety. Because if down the road you really don't feel like eating and suddenly the smell of food is a problem, or you're no longer tolerating something you used to eat well, we need some variety in there so we have other choices of foods to eat too. So that's the very first place I would start is with what have I eaten? What in there is good? What do I want to keep? And usually that's how it goes. Like, can I have, can I have, can I have? This is what I like. And I say yes because it's this one, the big loaf of bread every day. We might have smaller amounts of that. There are a lot of things you can have, but at smaller levels. And then after that, what do I need to have so that I can get my body ready to go through chemo? And then hydration, of course.
So someone's actually posted caffeine during chemo. Is that allowed?
There are some chemotherapeutic agents where it's not allowed. So always follow your doctor and nurse's advice on that. Caffeine is an interferer with certain kinds of chemo. But after that, there's nothing about caffeine that I have seen that is detrimental in any other way as naturally. It's a stimulant. So it is a mild stimulant. It does increase your heart rate a little. So you need to know, about whether your heart rate is being affected or not. But it's not a bad, I don't see any negative effect of caffeine other than that.
Okay. And again, I'd like to encourage everyone, if they'd like to just ask the question, you can put your hands up and unmute yourself and ask the question. I see a lot of questions on the chat box. Um, what about mushrooms? Can you provide clarity on mushrooms for cancer support and treatment? I get all these patients that come in and they ask me about these different mushrooms, and I'm like, yes, they taste very good in salads, but pizza, but that's the limit of my knowledge. So please tell me, how can mushrooms help?
Definitely cook them. So be careful, you
Okay.
definitely cook them. But so mushrooms have become so popular because we now are learning more about the medicinal mushrooms. And even the button mushroom, that little one, has some medicinal quality. When I say medicinal, I mean two things. One, it's an anti-inflammatory. The fiber in there makes it anti-inflammatory. But there's some Asian and specifically some Chinese and now even Western data showing that certain mushrooms have the ability to boost the immune system a little bit. Well, what does that mean? It means that when they did a study with it, they saw the white count, specifically like a natural killer cell, go up a little, in the person's bloodstream. Everybody? No. All the time? No. Potentially, yes. But how much would you have to eat? Honestly, it's usually I always ask that question in the audience. It's like buckets full. So that's why these medicinal mushroom supplements have become so popular. And that's where you have to make sure there's no interference about it with your chemo that you're on. And, be very careful about it. Have I occasionally had a patient where it's cleared and they use the medicinal mushroom and they do have better immunity when the doctor takes their blood? Yes, but guess what? They also had the lag phase. Like, in other words, your doctor's always giving you a little time because your bone marrow is already making these cells you need. So we don't really know that it's the mushroom or that it's just your body doing what it's supposed to do. The main question for anything like that is there possible harm? Is there possible benefit? If possible harm, forget it. You don't need any more risk in your life. You don't need risk. Possible benefit without harm, okay, try it, see if it helps. But just know that your body has a natural ability to increase its immunity as well. So,
So, Catherine, yeah, please unmute yourself. You have a question. You've raised your hand. I can tell you, Catherine is a long-term breast cancer survivor. She's super awesome, and she's always an advocate for everything. So, Catherine, please ask your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we
oh,
can.
yes.
You can hear me. Sorry, I'm using my son's iPad and I don't know how to put my face on the screen. So sorry, you're looking at a blank screen. So many of the ladies, including myself, post breast cancer, having had hysterectomies or having been put into early menopause through medication or through surgery suffer with insomnia. Now, I personally take magnesium glycinate every night before bed. I limit my coffee intake to 2 coffees in the morning and never after sort of 11 a.m. Herbal tea only at night, rooibos at night. So I have a routine I go through which has helped a lot. Do you have any diet recommendations for helping alleviate the signs and symptoms of insomnia? Because it's something a lot of us face.
Yes, and that's a great question. I'm glad that your program is working for you. And, you know, insomnia almost requires a multifaceted cure, right? It's really, if you're not going to take, of course, just a medication for sleep, but even on the supplemental level, I notice a lot of people will try just, you know, lavender or just melatonin. That rarely is the solution. So in the diet itself, though, oh, we can see you now. Hello. So
I've done
So I know you're asking for diet, and I think you're really asking for food. So food and teas.
Yeah.
Teas, for example, as you're saying, non-caffeinated, okay, like a chamomile tea, lavender tea. There are a lot of teas that are very relaxing, and they're very helpful. There are other food products and items that are stimulants than caffeine too. So in addition to taking out caffeine, be careful with your teas. Even green tea has caffeine if you buy it, unless you buy it
Absolutely.
decaffeinated.
And
Yeah, and there are certain foods that are that kind of bring up our, like spices especially can elevate your heart rate. That's a stimulant for your heart. So you want to eat blander foods. And if you're really having trouble sleeping, I think that for some people, eating easier to digest foods before bedtime, I'm talking about just the last meal, are a good idea because there you won't have as much going on in here, less potential for reflux as well. What would those be? Like just the white chicken breast, white rice, egg whites. These are easy to digest foods. They're not complicated. And even eating that last meal, one item at a time, not a casserole or not a soup with all kinds of things in it. You know, very uncomplicated foods. That seems to help too, because when you are digesting, even though you're on the rest phase, by the way, of the nervous system, there's still a lot going on chemically that I think is keeping people elevated and awake. So I think that's
we,
helpful.
my husband's Indian, and we eat a lot of spicy food.
Uh-huh.
Mm, mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that keep you awake, Catherine. All the
Pardon?
reflux keep you awake.
Sorry?
The reflux will keep you awake.
Yeah. Oh, and the curry's so good for you, but maybe just the last meal. There is also an interesting thing that's seen a lot in South and Central America where they have a lot of caffeine, that there's that last dose that actually has a reverse effect. So you never know. It actually can put them to sleep. There are people who use it that way even.
I
So,
used to, when I drank loads of coffee, say, I'll have a coffee before I go to bed. Now, but that was before
ah,
cancer and before menopause and before all
mhm,
the medication.
mhm.
What about magnesium glycinate? Does it work, or
No, it's real. It's a real thing.
it,
It's a muscle relaxant. And so if anything about you not sleeping is even very mild tension in your muscles, then that's probably
it does
helping
work?
you.
And I've never
Yeah.
tried melatonin. Is that safe for estrogen positive ladies or not?
I don't recommend it. And
Mm.
for those who are non-estrogen, I still recommend it only when it's in combination with lavender and lemon balm and a few of the, you'll find these nice like combinations on the market that are better, like Sleep Optimizer, if you look at that one, what's in it. But yeah, I think that um, there are many herbal preparations that are relaxing, and that's how they can help you with sleep. Then there's so much psychology, right? What are you doing with your mind if you're ruminating on things, or get it off your mind on a list? And I love this one that came up again yesterday, where take a word like the word sleep, okay? And just use each letter S. Think of all the other words that start with S. L. Think of all the other words that start with L, and so on. And pretty soon your mind will be so monotonized, you know, by doing this, that you're very likely to drift off to sleep.
Well,
So,
my trick, and I tell the ladies we have a cancer support group here in Dubai, and it's a
uh-huh.
WhatsApp based group. And I tell ladies, I swear by sleep stories.
Oh, they're great. Do you
I
haven't heard
found
the end to any of them, right? I don't know the ending to a
I
single
used to
story.
play Blue Gold by Stephen Fry while I was cooking because I never heard the full story. But then
All
I
right,
started knowing.
we have someone else's hand up. Let me just get to her.
Yeah.
Okay, nice to meet you,
I don't
Catherine.
have
Thank you.
Thank you.
your name,
Thank
but
you.
you're coming online as iPhone. So okay, maybe you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I see.
I think you're muted, or you're not muted anymore. Would you like to ask your question because your hand is up?
Sorry, who did you say? Sapna?
Yes,
Oh.
yes, you. Yes, because
Oh, me? Okay,
yeah,
okay.
we can't see your name.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So my daughter is 11 years old who is going through Ewing sarcoma cancer, which is a cancer of bones and soft tissues. And she's, I think the chemo, she went through a full radiation in her pelvis area. And the chemotherapy treatment is going to, I think this is the last treatment that is going to stop, after which there's going to be radiation to her lungs and other areas. But I just wanted to know more about the do's and the don'ts and the relapses, because I heard that Ewing sarcoma generally is very aggressive, and within the first 5 years, there is some kind of a relapse that happens. So anything that I can do or not, which will avoid her from the relapse,
Okay.
and what I can do.
Okay, so I'm so sorry to hear that's a very difficult cancer and very difficult for you as her mother, I am sure. And the foods that she likes, it's a good idea that she still enjoys the food she's eating, and we're going to eat even more of the ones that are healthiest, right? So things that are giving her very good protein, eggs, chicken, fish, or if she eats beans, beans are an excellent idea as well. Any nuts that she likes. Maybe she likes peanut butter or almond butter. Is she eating okay? Is her appetite okay?
It keeps coming up and down during treatments. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. She goes into a complete shell. She doesn't eat, not drink, not water,
Mm-hmm.
nothing during the
Mm-hmm.
treatment. And after the treatment, it takes some time for her nutrition to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm here in the U.S. In Winston-Salem Hospital, trying to get her treatments done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the scare of first the last scans that is going to be done, because they're hoping for no increase or new activity that they see, and after which the treatments are like done. They're saying that after that the treatments are done. So like, if there's thing that can be done to avoid a relapse, I don't know. I don't have any knowledge in terms of food, in terms of other, in terms of trials.
Right.
It's just
Let me first reassure you, there is nothing in the food that you could do that would hurt the process, okay? I just want to make sure you know that. Like, don't worry, I'm not giving her the right food. That's going to hurt this and she won't do well. There is nothing that will do that. But just enhancing her fluids, even when she has the time on treatment where she really is isolating, small sips of things like broth, juices, popsicles, anything that you can get her to sip on and eat little bits are fine. Every little bit counts. So that's okay. When she moves out of that phase, gradually increasing that she's eating more things, but there's nothing you can feed her that's going to be a problem, nor magically fix this, but good protein, good fluids, and I would try to make sure color. When I say color, I'm like berries and veggies, as much as she will eat things that have color, even if she just wants to have a smoothie or a shake or something like that. I know where that hospital is, and I know there are other places you can get some things ready made for her, even like some healthy shakes and healthy smoothies if she's not wanting to eat.
So I think your name is Sapna, right?
Yes.
But Sapna, maybe you can connect with Cynthia offline, maybe to have a more detailed conversation. Cindy, would that be okay if I shared your
That would
email
be fine.
with her?
Thank
because you're both in the US, so you could have a private consultation with her. But I'd like to reassure you, just from a medical oncology perspective,
Yes.
Ewing sarcoma in its early stages is probably one of the most curable diseases. It's just that it takes a long time to to give that treatment. It's usually a year long with radiation and a lot of different chemos, but a lot of children get through it and they do very well. And they have
if it's early stage, but if it is diagnosed as metastatic, and if it's metastatic, and if it's like started with the pelvis area going into the lungs and
that's
the
There's
spine.
different, there's still a good percentage of patients who do very well. So I'm gonna let the two of you perhaps connect
Thank you.
offline to
Okay.
have a more detailed conversation of how perhaps Cynthia, you can help her in terms of how she can deal with her daughter in terms of better nutrition. And I'm sure every little bit will help. And we're all praying for you and your daughter so that
Thank
this disease doesn't come back. You're a fighter and your daughter is a fighter. If she's anything like you, you're both fighters. You're not going to give up.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. I see there's some other questions that have come online. And two questions from Azza. Azza, would you like to ask the questions yourself? I know that you're there, so maybe you can unmute yourself. Azza? Maybe she doesn't want to ask the questions herself, but she's asked two questions, which I think are very, very relevant. One is post-chemo and radiation arthralgia. Is there anything to consume in food to, help with it, and especially for bone health? And second, she wants to eat ice cream. How much ice cream can she eat? I can tell you she's finished her chemotherapy.
Okay.
The main chemotherapy she's finished and she's looking for ice cream. I've told her Haagen-Dazs vanilla, she needs to go and eat as much as she wants, but
As much as she wants, right? So, but if you're feeling like I don't want to like take the complete reins off and I want to know how much is okay, because you don't want guilt. Think about your body size. So if you're anywhere between, let's say 5 foot and 5'5", and you weigh up to about like 145 or 50, then you can have 2 cups at a time. So I know things in cups, sorry, that helps. But really, if you want more, just wait about a half hour and have a little more. So, because with ice cream, it's all about how much you raise your blood sugar right then. That's what I'm saying. Like a scoop, a scoop, 2 scoops, and then a little later you can have 2 scoops. So that's really what matters. So you can have the ice cream. It's not damaging, it's not poisonous. And as far as the arthralgia, some of the same anti-inflammatories help with that too. Specifically, the turmeric or curry actually do help. And if you have a dish that you're making that has turmeric or curry in it, and you add a little rosemary, that enhances your ability to get the turmeric around the body. There's even a supplement now that you're post-treatment that you could buy that combines turmeric and the rosemary in it. And it almost feels like you've taken an Advil, but it's not, it's herbs, and it actually helps a lot with the pain from arthralgia.
okay. Let's see, there's so many questions here. Post-chemo breast cancer, can we take coenzyme Q10? I know there's a lot of stuff out there about whether you can take these coenzyme Q10 supplements to support reproductive organs with the hope to be a mother post-cancer and chemotherapy.
So it's definitely good for other reasons, the CoQ10. And there's just now starting to be a little bit coming out, like maybe we better watch out, we better look into CoQ10 more for breast cancer. But I have not seen anything linking it for reproductive health. So I would have to get back to you on that, because that's nothing that I've seen at this point.
Then would valerian root tea help with insomnia?
It could. So maybe it could help, because it is also very good. It seems to be not only good at relaxation, but kind of a mind mood reset for a lot of people. So, but it is something that's an adaptogen, meaning that it could help for a while and eventually you've adapted to it, so it may not always, and I've not seen any negative side effect with valerian.
And then it says, what is your view on consuming conventional dairy products during and post cancer. I hear a lot about not having dairy products. I don't think you can really take that out of your diet completely, and it does support you to a certain extent. But what are your thoughts here?
I weigh in the same way you do. I think the calcium and the vitamin D are so important. And I don't feel that the data on dairy is strong enough to exclude it from the diet. I understand that scientifically it is a mild pro-inflammatory. So for someone who had really raging, difficult rheumatic arthritis, they might really see a difference. But for in the cancer world, I don't see that it's, I still do not see data that says that it is an issue. The only thing that is a precaution is for women with breast cancer, especially ER/PR positive breast cancer, when they look at women who stay in remission, if they were eating a high fat, like a whole cream dairy daily, that seemed to be an issue. They were not staying in remission as long. That's the only thing out there so far. So just be careful on the fat content.
So Anusha is a lady who's going through breast cancer right now and getting therapy. Can you please shed light on foods to consume for celiac disease patients who cannot have foods with gluten and wheat-containing ingredients, which I think can sometimes be a problem?
Oh, yeah. Perfect example of what I mentioned just really quickly at the very beginning, that sometimes you might have some other comorbidity, we call it, or other condition, a GI condition, especially along with going through cancer and cancer treatment. So in that case, you need to adhere to the gluten-free diet. Now, remember, there are lots of foods in nature without gluten. Potatoes don't have gluten. Rice doesn't. Gluten is found in wheat, right? So all non-wheat foods are not gluten products. Now, when you have a processed pre-made thing, they've often added a little wheat or added some gluten, unnecessarily, of course, but it gives texture to food. So you have to read labels for that. So you could go straight down your same path as gluten-free and just get the other grains that you need from different grains like rice, potato, bulgur. There are a lot of other grains that you can eat that would not have the gluten. If you're more concerned about a certain food you've been eating where it's processed and now you're wondering about whether that's going to work for you or not, I can always check those out. But just you can stay gluten-free and then still eat enough. It's not hard to still get your needs met.
So one of our doctors is actually asking a very important question. We have a lot of patients now, as you know, that take immunotherapy, especially for triple negative breast cancer or for
Mhm.
lung cancer or melanomas. And the question the patients ask is an anti-inflammatory diet an immunotherapy? Is it okay to take the two together? Because obviously when you're doing immunotherapy, you're trying to induce an inflammation and you're taking an anti-inflammatory diet. So can the two actually get along is the question that she's asking.
It's a great question. And that gets down to the fact that immunotherapy, of course, when the immune system's stimulated, you are causing inflammation. And a type, I mean, that is an inflammatory response. So why would we want to dampen that, right, with an anti-inflammatory diet? Right now, the lens that we're looking through is that it's dampening the effects in the extremities or in the periphery of the body, but we don't think that it would interfere with the immuno response. That's such a targeted response with cancer. But I'm actually got my finger on that pulse looking for more and more research right now too, because that's another good reason to stay away from high dose supplements, right? You wouldn't want to take high dose omega-3 supplements while on immunotherapy if the whole point of part of the mechanism of the therapy is inflammation, the inflammatory response. So I hope we have more research soon to answer that, because let me put it another way too, we're also not seeing the side effects that we're trying to preclude with the anti-inflammatory diet. So you rarely have these side effects with the immunotherapy. So that's another reason why we might just back off of having such a high anti-inflammatory diet.
And then another question that's come up is, do superfoods like turmeric, grapefruit, or drinks like chamomile and mint tea interfere with tamoxifen? And what about raw or cooked seafood and shellfish?
There are new items that are starting to reveal some evidence that they could interfere with the medication, with tamoxifen, or also with some of the other estrogen blocker medications. So again, because even though they're not phytoestrogens, they may have some phytoestrogenic effects or abilities. If it's another one of those things where we don't have direct data with patients showing that this interfered with the medication, but it's like a red flag, it's a warning. So personally, because the warning is there, I would back off of that. Now that means you're backing off a few items like that for 5 to 10 years, right? But I still, if it were me and I would want the tamoxifen, for example, to do the best it could while I'm taking it, I don't think it's worth the risk. Now that you know the information that there's a potential for anti-estrogenic qualities, I think. For estrogenic qualities, I would back off of those.
Last question before I let you go, Cynthia. What are your thoughts? And I see the question here, and that's why I'm asking it. What are your thoughts on high dose vitamin C, vitamin D for patients either during chemotherapy or post chemotherapy? Is it useful? Should they be doing it? Because I have a lot of patients that keep asking these questions.
I have even physicians who are giving high dose IVs of vitamin C. So vitamin C is a very powerful antioxidant. I would want to know that that particular chemotherapy has been judged or tested in the environment of very high dose vitamin C before I could ever say yes to that. And because we're looking through two different lenses. And if one is going to block the other, if taking the high dose vitamin C could in any way interfere with that chemotherapy, you just can't take that risk. Yeah. So we know that high dose vitamin C has great benefits for a lot of reasons in all kinds of cases, but maybe not with that particular chemotherapy. So I usually say no. Now, after treatment, I don't see any reason not to, but during treatment, until it's been studied, I just don't. I remember way back when everyone thought folic acid should be taken. It's a B vitamin, and it has to do with cellular dysplasia, and so it would really help. You wouldn't have as many cells that would become cancer cells until they got the evidence that it blocked certain chemotherapies. And as soon as they realized that, and then you think about the people who didn't know that and who were taking these high doses and found out later, we don't know if it impaired their ability to survive or not. So it's really not worth the risk. It looks like it's nothing, it's just a vitamin, but they're chemicals. They are chemicals. So we have to look into the world of chemistry. So until I knew that the study actually showed that it didn't interfere, I would say no.
Yeah, and we do have results from a SWOG study that retrospectively looked at patients who got chemotherapy for breast cancer. And if they were taking supplements, they seemed to be having a higher recurrence rate. And these were not like your supplements like low doses of vitamin B that we sometimes give for neuropathy, but they really these high doses, and even iron, I think during chemotherapy was shown to interfere with the efficacy of chemotherapy. So we don't have definitive data, but why would you want to risk impacting negatively the efficacy of chemotherapy? So thank you everyone for coming online today. We've had over 100 people attend, and I thank each and every one of you. You've asked so many questions. I haven't been able to go through everything, but I'm conscious of time. And don't worry, Cynthia's coming back next year for another session. We're always going to do something new, something different. Cynthia, any last words for everyone? And if I may say, Cynthia has been consulting with some of you privately as well. So I don't know, Cynthia, if you allow me, I can give them your email address so they can do a private one-on-one consultation with you.
Yes, that would be fine. I have plenty of time open for that. And my last word is get objective, stand back. Don't act out of fear, but act out of knowledge. Get some knowledge, find some experts who can tell you the answer. And if no one can, then err on the side of not taking a risk. I think that's important. And enjoy your food again. Make sure you enjoy.
Can I please
Yes,
ask?
yes, for
Can I
sure.
please ask everybody to say a prayer for my daughter Kiara Hemnani to come out of this, please?
Yes.
If everybody can say a prayer, I really appreciate it.
We will.
Absolutely. we're all praying for her. To everyone out there, her name is Kiara. She's suffering from Ewing sarcoma. She's in the US. And I'm going to say this again. If she's anything like you, she's a fighter. And she will get through this because everyone is praying for her. And if you
Thank
ever
you.
need anything, I've sent you Cynthia's email address privately so that you can connect with her and have a private consultation. And Cynthia is awesome. She's going to help you. I'm sure she's going to help you in terms of the food aspect
Yes.
of it. And I'm sure that your team of physicians there is doing their best to help her. And inshallah, she will do well. Always be positive. Okay.
Thank you.
If you need
I
anything,
just
we're
the
here. We're
message.
here to
Yeah.
support you. We're here to support your little one as well.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thanksgiving is this weekend. Go eat your turkeys. Cynthia won't say no to for you to eat as much as you want this weekend. Your turkey, your cranberry, your mashed potatoes. Ayub, you are on mute. Do you have any last parting words apart from drinking alcohol? He's still muted. We still can't hear him.
Oh,
But thank you, Cynthia. And like I said, I promise I'm bringing her back next year for another session. Let us know what topics you want to discuss. She's given me a whole list of different topics. Thank you, Catherine, for informing everyone today about the time change and letting everyone know. I will send you Cynthia's email address and then you can post it if anyone would like to get in touch with her. She's doing awesome consultations with my patients for I don't know. I think I should consult with you sometime. I think I need psychological help at some point. And
Thank you so much. Thank you.
and
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing all of you next year in 2025.